Recently, the Washington Post created a column where they accused China of being irresponsible with their arms sales, saying that Chinese arms exports have intensified armed conflicts and created humanitarian disasters in Africa and other places. Of course, China wasn't too particularly happy with this and wrote a response to it. And that response should be fairly obvious. I shouldn't have to explain it in any way. However, what I would like to do is give you a commentary from my perspective, looking at both sides doing what it is that they do. Now, I find it fairly humorous, if it wasn't so serious, of the United States accusing China of being irresponsible with weapon sales, given exactly what it is that it does. According to the U.S. Congressional Research Service, U.S. arms exports accounted for 78% of the world's total in 2011, and about half of them flowed into the Middle East. So we can see that despite whatever China or anyone else in the world has done for that matter, it's fairly almost insignificantly nothing compared to what the United States alone has done. And besides, this idea that the United States cares about what kind of humanitarian disasters that can come up as a result of its arms sales is ludicrous. How many U.S. weapons went into the hands of Libyan so-called rebels that ended up slaughtering the entire country, to where there was no conflict, to where there was a massive conflict that's killed an estimated 30,000 people and resulted in the murders of many high-ranking officials? They didn't seem to care too much about that. In fact, they didn't care about the loss of civilian lives at all, and eventually dropped the entire pretext and just went ahead and jumped right in and started doing the killing themselves. Not in an overt way as what was done in Afghanistan and Iraq, but certainly with air power alone aided the so-called rebels of Libya, the terrorists, who ended up toppling the Gaddafi government, one of the most progressive governments that ever existed in Africa and the Middle East, and who also had the highest standard of living. They cared nothing for those people. U.S. weapon sales to the activities that are currently going on in Syria, creating a huge humanitarian disaster. There practically would be no uprising at all in Syria right now if the U.S. was not funding it. And this is not up for debate. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is actively going on right now in Syria. The U.S. has already been caught supporting them. A document was leaked with Barack Obama's signature on it, providing aid to the rebels in terms of intelligence gathering, non-violent things. But there have been other instances where it has been reported by other media where U.S. anti-tank weapons are ending up in the hands of the rebels. I mean, have no illusions. These anti-tank weapons didn't fall off the back of a truck and then end up in the rebels' hands. Arms manufacturers do not lose, unending millions of dollars of weapons every year. They are selling it to these people on purpose. And that doesn't matter what country you're coming from. These groups don't just buy stolen guns. These guns are sold to them by companies on purpose. They don't lose these guns and they fall off the back of a truck and just end up in the hands of certain groups. They're sold to them through intermediaries. So don't have any illusion that these arms manufacturers are not directly responsible for weapons getting into people's hands. They very well are. And they do know what they're doing. But the United States has had no moral qualms about the numerous instances that have happened as a result of it selling weapons. It had no problem selling weapons to Iran to fund the Contras, who raped nuns, literally went around murdering children, literally, taking their heads and slamming them against rocks and rivers to punish villages for collectivizing. None of this completely irresponsible behavior ever bothered the United States. The fact that anyone can really say that their sale of arms was not irresponsible or not bad in some way is completely ridiculous. This is a fallacious position coming from the United States. China doesn't really have any more of a moral position when it comes to selling arms than the United States does. They both sell arms. China, however, on the other hand, does take a somewhat more moral position in that they don't particularly care who it is they sell the weapons to. The United States will only sell weapons to people that defend their interests and do what it is that they want them to do. On the other hand, China will sell weapons to just about anybody, which is actually more fair and more in line with the concept of a free market. But the whole argument for weapons and free market in the United States is a whole different video altogether. What they're really saying is that China is selling weapons to people that they don't like. China is selling weapons to people who are opposed to the people that the United States is supporting. This is the real criticism here. This is what they're actually complaining about. They call it irresponsible arms sales, but what they are really doing is just selling arms to people that they're against, and that's what this complaint is really all about. Their interests are being undermined by China selling weapons to people who are against their interests. And that's exactly what this is about. This is more, how do you say, free market hypocrisy kind of situation. Now, selling guns to everyone is what would be fair. And selling guns to everyone would be probably more along the lines of what a free market principle actually is, and the way it should be. Allowing people to defend themselves against the people who are buying guns from the United States. Now, what this reminds me of is the character opposite Nicolas Cage in The Lord of War. The agent Jack Valentine who spent all his time trying to catch Nicolas Cage's character. His criticism of him was that he gave the poorest people in the world the means to kill each other. And I think this is a fraudulent position. He did not give them that ability. If they were going to kill, they were going to kill. What Nicolas Cage's character actually did was give weapons to people that Jack Valentine's employers, the United States government, didn't want to have weapons.